It was a calm, honey-gold morning when the engines broke the silence of Cedar Hollow, a small town that usually woke to the slow hum of crickets and clinking coffee cups. The peaceful stillness shattered as a convoy of motorcycles rumbled down the road, their sound echoing off the weathered diner windows. The townsfolk looked up, startled, as the riders pulled into the dusty gravel lot, their leather jackets catching the morning light like dark wings. At the center of the group sat Dean Mercer, the club's leader, a man whose name had once filled barrooms and back roads alike with stories of both fear and respect. He wasn't the kind to speak much. His eyes did that for him. They were sharp, cold blue, yet carried the heaviness of a man who'd seen more nights than he could count. He had the kind of face that looked carved from granite, every line a reminder of the road he'd traveled and the mistakes he'd buried along the way. Inside the hollow diner, the sound of forks scraping plates faded as the bikers entered. The waitress, Lena, wore a name tag dulled by years of use. She was in her early 30s, but looked older somehow, as if life had aged her faster than time itself. Her dark hair was tied back neatly, though a faint bruise peeked out from beneath a layer of makeup near her jaw. Dean noticed it right away, not out of curiosity, but recognition. He'd seen that kind of bruise before, and the memory clawed at a part of him he thought long dead. Lena moved between tables quietly, her smile thin but practiced. She poured Dean's coffee with trembling hands, the cup rattling against the saucer. "Rough morning?" he asked gently. She forced a laugh that never reached her eyes. "They all are," she murmured, before slipping away toward the kitchen. From his seat, Dean watched her boss bark an order from behind the counter. Carl Benson, the diner's manager, was a thick-set man with mean eyes and a mouth that always seemed to curl into something cruel. When Lena accidentally dropped a glass, Carl's voice cut through the room like a whip. Dean's jaw clenched, but he stayed quiet. Not yet. The rest of the club laughed and talked, but Dean barely heard them. He saw the fear in Lena's posture, the way she flinched at every sound. It reminded him too much of Emily, the woman he'd once loved, and lost, because he hadn't stepped in soon enough. That guilt was a scar he carried deeper than any ink on his skin. As the sun dipped low, the bikers rode out, engines growling down the open road. But that night, Dean couldn't sleep. The memory of Lena's shaking hands replayed in his mind. The echo of Carl's cruelty gnawed at his conscience. He'd sworn he'd never turn away again. Not after Emily. By dawn, the decision was made. The next morning, when the first rays of light hit the diner's chrome sign, Dean's bike was already parked outside. This time, he wasn't there for coffee. He was there to keep a promise. To himself. And to a stranger who reminded him of everything he once failed to protect. The morning sun spilled across the cracked parking lot as Lena arrived for her shift, her apron folded neatly under one arm. Her eyes widened when she saw the motorcycles lined up outside once again, chrome catching the dawn like a promise. The same group from yesterday, and at the counter, Dean Mercer, waiting. She hesitated before walking in. Something about him unsettled her. Not because he frightened her, but because he noticed her. Really noticed. Most people saw through her like she was made of glass. But when Dean's gaze met hers, she felt something steady, solid, almost safe. "Morning," he said, his voice calm but firm. "You doing all right today?" "I'm fine," she replied too quickly, forcing a smile, but her voice cracked on the word fine. Dean nodded slowly, not believing her, but not pressing either. "All right," he said softly, taking a sip of his coffee. "If that ever changes, you let someone know." Before she could respond, Carl Benson pushed through the kitchen doors, his scowl already fixed in place. "You're late," he snapped, though she wasn't. Lena lowered her head, murmuring an apology. Carl's eyes flicked to Dean, narrowing. "You and your buddy's going to sit here all day? Or are you actually buying something?" Dean rose from his stool. The motion was slow, deliberate. The air shifted. The diner's hum quieted. His brothers, Mick, Ray, and Colby, straightened behind him, their presence filling the room like thunderclouds rolling in. Dean didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "She's not your punching bag," he said evenly. Carl scoffed, half laughing, half sneering. "You don't know what you're talking about, old man." Dean took a step closer. "I know what fear looks like," he said, his tone now edged with steel. "And I know what kind of man causes it." Carl's mouth opened to retort, but one look at the dozen bikers watching from behind Dean stopped him cold. His false confidence drained from his face, replaced by something smaller, meaner, cowardice. He muttered something under his breath and stormed out, the door slamming behind him so hard the bell cracked. The silence that followed was heavy, but not empty. It was full of relief, of disbelief, of something like healing. Lena stood frozen, tears streaming silently down her cheeks. She didn't speak, but Dean nodded once, as if to say, "You're safe now." When she finally found her voice, it was barely a whisper. "Thank you." Dean shook his head. "Don't thank me. Just promise you'll stop hiding from the sunlight." That afternoon, news of what happened at the Hollow Diner spread through Cedar Hollow like wildfire. People who had looked away now looked inward, ashamed of their silence. By the next week, Carl Benson was gone for good, and the diner came under new management, a woman named Janet, who treated her staff like family. Lena stayed for a while, but later took a job at a small cafe near the town square, one filled with laughter instead of shouting. Months passed, and every so often Dean would stop by for coffee. Not as a savior, just as a friend. Each time, Lena's smile reached her eyes a little more. Something changed in Dean, too. For the first time in years, he felt peace. His club brothers noticed it. The softer tone in his voice, the way he lingered when kids waved at their bikes. Soon, they started organizing charity rides for women's shelters, food drives, and school fundraisers. What began as one quiet act of courage became a ripple that changed the whole town. One evening, as the sun melted into the horizon, Lena stood outside her cafe and saw the familiar roar of motorcycles cutting through the orange sky. Dean raised a gloved hand as he passed, and she smiled, her heart steady. Because sometimes kindness doesn't come dressed in soft words or gentle smiles. Sometimes it rides in on two wheels, wrapped in leather and road dust, carrying a heart that has learned, through pain, how to heal others.